As we peel back the layers of how communication operates beneath the surface, it becomes increasingly clear that our interactions are rarely neutral. They're influenced, often unconsciously, by mental shortcuts, emotional biases, and hidden comparisons. Social comparison and selective listening are not isolated effects. They're entangled in a broader psychological web that includes deeply ingrained mechanisms like the fundamental attribution error and cognitive dissonance, both of which shape the way we interpret others and ourselves. Let's take the fundamental attribution error. It refers to our tendency to attribute others' behavior to their character while attributing our own actions to circumstances. If someone snaps at us, we may think, they're rude, instead of asking, are they having a bad day? But when we ourselves are short-tempered, we're quick to justify, I didn't sleep well, or it's just a stressful week. Now imagine this pattern playing out in everyday conversations, especially when we're already listening selectively. We begin to construct rigid stories about people. She's always dramatic. He's lazy. They're unreliable. And the more we stick to these stories, the less willing we are to update them, even in the face of new behavior. This rigid storytelling ties directly to cognitive dissonance, the mental discomfort we feel when we encounter information that contradicts our existing beliefs. Say you believe a coworker is unmotivated, but then they suddenly pull off a great result. Instead of adjusting your opinion, you might dismiss it, they just got lucky this time. Why? Because changing your belief requires effort, humility, and admitting you might have misjudged. So we cling to consistency, even if it warps our perception of reality. These psychological effects reinforce one another. When you compare yourself to others and feel inferior, you're more likely to defensively interpret their success as arrogance or luck. When you're listening selectively, you're more prone to attribute their emotions or arguments to character flaws rather than valid perspectives. And all the while, these filters are invisible. They feel like just the way things are. But here's the insight that can transform not only how we communicate but how we connect. Most people are not malicious or incompetent, they are misunderstood. And often, we misunderstand because we're looking through a fog of our own biases, fears, and assumptions. Real communication begins when we question those lenses. So how do we challenge these mental reflexes? One powerful strategy is perspective taking, the deliberate act of imagining a situation from another person's point of view. This practice activates parts of the brain associated with empathy and emotional regulation. It's not about agreeing with everything someone says, it's about understanding why they might say it. This shift in mindset can de-escalate conflict, open space for dialogue, and replace suspicion with curiosity. Another tool is slow thinking, a term coined by psychologist Daniel Kahneman in his work on cognitive biases. Most of our reactions are fast, automatic. But when we slow down and reflect, why am I reacting this way? What assumption am I making right now? We introduce mindfulness into communication. We gain the power to respond rather than react. In emotionally charged moments, even a short pause, 3 seconds of silence before replying, can be enough to recalibrate. During those 3 seconds, your brain has a chance to catch up with your values. Am I listening to connect or to protect my ego? Am I speaking from clarity or from fear? Let's ground this with a real-world example. Imagine you're in a team meeting. A colleague criticizes your idea. Your instinctive thought might be, they're undermining me. But what if they're actually trying to build on it? What if their feedback is poorly worded but well-intentioned? If you've already categorized them as competitive or condescending, you won't hear the nuance. But if you pause, Listen fully, and ask a clarifying question. Could you elaborate on what part you think could be improved? You create a space where communication deepens instead of breaking down. The same applies in personal relationships. Selective listening often plays out in arguments between partners, where one says, "You never listen to me," and the other replies, "I do, you just never acknowledge it." Both may be partially right, but neither is fully hearing the feeling beneath the words. Practicing empathy means asking, what are they really trying to express? And not dismissing emotional signals just because they're uncomfortable. Importantly, these effects are not flaws of character, they are features of the human mind. We are wired to take shortcuts. We evolved to protect ourselves from perceived threats, and sometimes that includes uncomfortable truths or differing opinions. But just because something is natural doesn't mean it should remain unchallenged. Growth requires intentionality. We must also talk about the role of emotional safety. People only speak openly when they feel safe from judgment. If you want to encourage honest communication, you must be willing to listen without instantly correcting or defending. Psychological safety isn't created through agreement, it's created through presence. Through the feeling that someone is truly with you in a conversation, and here lies the paradox, we seek to be understood, yet often fail to offer that same understanding. We long to be accepted, yet instinctively judge. We crave connection, yet habitually filter what others say and who they are. Breaking this cycle starts with humility, the humility to admit we don't always hear clearly. See clearly, or know fully, communication is not a one-way street. It's a dynamic dance of perception, emotion, and vulnerability. And when we bring awareness to the hidden forces behind our words, social comparison, selective attention, defensive attribution, we step into a higher form of dialogue. One where listening becomes an act of compassion, and speaking becomes an offering of truth, not a weapon of control. In this space, real human connection becomes possible, not through perfection, but through presence.